Welcome to episode 36 of Inside Politics, for teens, by teens, where I explore the politics and issues impacting our generation. I'm your host, Christina Li, and today I'm focusing on political journalism. For this, I've invited Catherine Boudreau, sustainability policy reporter for Politico, who has also previously covered food, agriculture, and nutrition policy. Catherine, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. So let's jump right in. So I know that sustainability is a pretty broad term that covers a lot. So how would you define sustainability from the lens of reporting on its policy?
Yeah, so when I started reporting on sustainability in May, we kind of had a lot of conversations about how to frame the topic and how it will, what topics I'll be reporting on. And we kind of framed it as environmental, social, and government. So ESG is kind of my guiding light, I would say, and also the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So there's 17 of them, so I don't cover all of them. But I would say that my main focus is on climate action and how policymakers at the state and federal level are negotiating these policies on climate action. Also, I write a lot about what companies are up to because the US doesn't have a national strategy on climate action. So a lot of what's going on is at the corporate level and also among NGOs and at the state and local level. So that's where I focus on in the environment. And then when it comes to social issues, I've been writing a lot about the racial and economic inequality in the country. For instance, in the recent newsletter I wrote, we talked about how the Federal Reserve was buying a lot of corporate bonds, and a lot of that money went to CEOs and shareholders instead of the workers. So I write a lot about inequality, and I would also say governance is a topic I cover as well, which is just how companies are structured and making sure that they're benefiting the broader community and also their CEOs and their top executives.
Understood. So how does policy govern sustainability?
So I would say that for the most part, policy and sustainability is like how they kind of connect is a new type of, I don't know, it's just like, I think everybody thinks about it as climate action. So that's a lot of what I'm writing about is how lawmakers and state officials are doing climate policies, but also, if during the pandemic, a lot of the unemployment insurance policies, or maybe it's food aid, or maybe it's preventing eviction. So those are all social kind of safety net policies that I cover and my colleagues at Politico cover. I rely a lot on my team at Politico to cover all these policies that are happening. So yeah, I'd say it's a mix of climate and environmental initiatives and also just social safety net policies.
Understood. So I guess when you talk about this intersection between corporations and policy, and I guess policymakers in terms of creating sustainability policy, because I think there's a statistic out there that's 71% of carbon emissions are from companies. So I guess what's your experience been, interacting or covering corporate lobbyists who are trying to influence sustainability policy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think right now we're in this phase where companies are making pledges to buy more renewable energy and, reach net zero emissions, and also make sure that they're protecting their workers. So that we're in this ambitious pledge phase. So the next part of that is holding companies accountable to actually meeting those goals, which is a lot harder than we think. So I recently was covering the Climate Week announcements from Walmart and also Morgan Stanley, the big bank. And what I found is that the details, at Walmart, the details are robust about how they're going to get there, but they're going to be relying on some technologies that haven't emerged yet. So they want to electrify all of the trucks that they have in their fleet. And this is the world's largest retailer. So that means they're going to have to show up on Capitol Hill and lobby Congress to make sure that there's policy in place to enable them to scale something like that. And I would say that corporations, and I don't want to speak specifically to Walmart, but in general, corporations have a mixed record on Capitol Hill when it comes to climate. You know, they might not show up, or if they do show up, it's not their top priority. You know, other things are. And I think that might change, you know, in the coming years. But I would say that there is the business interests on Capitol Hill don't necessarily align with sustainability most of the time. And the other company, again, Morgan Stanley, I'm covering. So they announced this goal to reach net zero financed emissions by 2050. And as someone who doesn't cover the financial industry very much, I'm like, what does that even mean? And honestly, their plan that they came out with wasn't very detailed. So I'm working on right now finding out more information about that, and whether it might involve them maybe showing up on Capitol Hill. So I think that it's the track record of companies on sustainability and what their lobbyists are doing on Capitol Hill is mixed when it comes to sustainability.
Understood. So I know you talked about keeping companies accountable for, I guess, like after they publicly announce it, to have them follow through. So I guess, is that your job as a reporter to, I guess, like point these things out when they're not like adhering to their plan?
Yeah, certainly. So that's probably my number one goal. And it's not just in the corporate sector, it's on Capitol Hill too, is accountability journalism. Politico places a premium on that. So it's challenging because sometimes companies aren't transparent. But for the most part, you know, I think it just comes down to asking questions. Also, there's a lot of non-governmental organizations, NGOs, environmental NGOs that are tracking company commitments and how they're progressing. So I rely on them as well in the work that they're doing. And also I rely on my coworkers, and like a lot of teamwork is involved, I would say, to police, I guess, what's going on, both on Capitol Hill, in state legislatures, and in corporate America.
Understood. And I know that there's a lot of activism going on right now in terms of, I guess, like reducing each individual's carbon footprint. But I guess from your work with the corporate realm of sustainability, do you think that like we should be changing the general public's idea of who should really be held accountable to, like, who should mainly be held accountable in terms of reducing carbon emissions?
Well, I think that individuals have a role to play for sure. And you know, but this is a systemic problem if we're talking about reducing waste or reducing emissions. So if the incentives aren't there in policy, then I think, you know, broad action isn't going to really happen. So, I mean, while as individuals, you know, we can make sure to reduce our single-use plastic consumption, or maybe buy an electric vehicle to boost that market. I think it is up to companies and policymakers to make sure that the incentives are right. Because even though all these companies are pledging to go green, and I just think that without some sort of national framework from Congress, there's maybe not as much economical incentive. So it's like companies have to make money, and some of these things, like expanding infrastructure for electric vehicles, for example, requires a lot of federal investment, most likely. So it's up to policymakers to do that, but it's also up to corporate America to go up there and make sure that Congress is acting on something like that.
Understood. So I guess, like, through your work, what's the most surprising insight you've gained about politics that most people wouldn't know about?
Most surprising insight about politics. Well, I think I came to Capitol Hill and just to Washington in 2013, right out of college, and certainly was maybe naive, or I didn't know that much about how government like Congress and the White House and all these federal agencies interacted together. But I guess I was surprised how easy it is to just stalk members of Congress in the halls of the House and Senate. Right now during the pandemic, you can't just go up. I mean, there's a limited kind of amount of people who can be there, but during normal times, I mean, you could just walk around the Capitol for the most part as a reporter and ask any senator or congressman you saw a question. Now, they might dodge you and they might pretend they're on their phone and not answer their question. But I do think it is remarkable that, you know, you can just so easily talk to a senator or a congressman. And, you know, I remember during the confirmation hearings over Justice Brett Kavanaugh, there was all of these moments that were caught on CNN, for example, like where activists were just approaching Senator Jeff Flake and cornering him on how he was going to vote and trying to hold him accountable. And that was a really big moment. And so I would just say that, you know, participating in democracy is maybe easier than we think. I mean, but right now I'm a little bit worried about, you know, the election and voting and voter suppression. But in general, it is, you can participate. Mm-hmm. And I think actually, I am surprised too that a lot of calls to your congressman actually do work. If you flood your congressman or senator's office with calls about one issue, they'll take note, I think. I've heard how that, like for instance, I covered the debate over should we should we make sure that genetically modified organisms are labeled on food packaging? And the flood of calls from people really got on lawmakers' radar and pushed this issue to the forefront of an agenda, and very quickly. Like one year I was covering this freshman congressman, Mike Pompeo, who is now in the Trump cabinet. So his rise is spectacular, but you know, he was just saying how he got so many calls, some of them really like scary threats, but it makes lawmakers pay attention. So again, participating in democracy is important, and it actually makes a difference if you are just basically hounding your congressman.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess like how has your work on sustainability policy, I guess like influenced the way about like you think about sustainability and the like in the actions that you choose to take on a daily basis?
Sure. So I would say that when I came into the beat, I was very much environmentally focused, but it's been great to expand that definition in my coverage to so many different parts of the economy and just like life in general. So while recycling and reducing emissions and all of that was on my radar, I also realized how much influence like the financial industry has. So that's been definitely a learning curve for me. And I actually decided to buy stocks for the first time, and I bought them with a asset manager, you know, TD Ameritrade. That's the one I went with, who actually has these environmental social governance funds that you can invest in, which I didn't know anything about before I started writing about that or writing about sustainability. So really, like, I'm hoping that my dollars will go to companies that, and the standards are evolving, but ideally, you know, that my money will be going to companies that are investing in going green. Maybe there's more of a balance between what CEOs are paid and the average worker. Maybe they're doing some more diversity initiatives because we have such a lack of diversity, especially Black and Latino women in leadership roles in corporate America. So that's, I would say, something I'm doing differently as a result of covering sustainability. Also, I've definitely avoided styrofoam for a long time, but I actually told my boyfriend, like, you can't order from this place anymore because they use styrofoam, and he was kind of like, what? But I'm trying to share my knowledge with my group of friends and loved ones. So yeah, I would say that those are things that I've learned and changed about my lifestyle, but I'm a work in progress for sure.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. So I know that Gen Z has been on the forefront of, I guess, like climate activism. So I guess like based on your experience with sustainability policy, and I guess like how we can continue to, I guess, like push politicians to make changes, do you have any advice for, I guess, like all of Gen Z on how we can on how what you learned can help us be more effective in our activism?
Yeah. Well, I think that showing up to the Capitol is important, whether it's in your state or maybe it's a local board meeting or something from your town officials. or here in DC if you can. That makes a difference. There's been, like, for instance, I remember last year I was covering some of the events by the Sunrise Movement, and people pay attention to that. Lawmakers pay attention to that. There's members of Congress staff there. They were talking about how to expand the sustainability of the food supply, or how to make it more sustainable. So I thought that was really interesting and effective. And I would also say that it's important to get your information from reliable sources and make sure that on social media you're not spreading misinformation and contributing to that. That's a top concern of mine, I would say, just in terms of the use of social media right now. And I just hope that your generation is maybe trying to become very media literate in that, like, just making sure you're getting your information from reliable sources, so that way when you go and promote your cause on social media, you can't poke a bunch of holes in that. Because I think that sometimes, I've been thinking about this as a reporter too, like, my goal is to be as factual as possible, because I don't want anyone to poke holes in my argument or what I'm writing. So I think it's important to make sure that the advocacy is based on facts. And yeah, I think that's my advice.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. So thank you so much, Catherine, for joining me here today. I really appreciate your insights. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see everybody next time on Inside Politics. Hi everyone, this is Christina. Thank you so much for watching Inside Politics, and please feel free to check out the rest of the interviews on my channel. See you next time!